Welcome, welcome, one and all, to the Tenure Facility Learning and Exchange event. Good morning to the East Coast and Latin America. Good afternoon to Europe and Africa. And good evening to Asia, Indonesia, Nepal, and India participants. Today we're here, and before we start, I would like to introduce Miss Otilia Lux de Coti. She will bless us today. She is a Maya, Quiche, indigenous woman from Guatemala. She stands by and stands with her own people and all indigenous peoples in the world in the recognition of land rights and land tenure struggles. She is the voice of many in her own country, as well as in the United Nations international arena. She sends a blessing to us all, united here today and for the next 3 days to share our experiences in this journey of land rights.
Ante este altar que contiene alimentos y flores como producto de las cosechas que hacen hombres y mujeres, jóvenes y niños, la Madre Tierra nos da el día de hoy estos productos para la alimentación de todas las personas. Estamos en un día tan maravilloso como lo es Junlajuj Ajú, que para nosotros los mesoamericanos significa realmente el día del abuelo sol. Hoy la Madre Tierra, la Maloca, la Chacra, el espíritu de los montes, la Mapu, la Pachamama, la casa en común, nos brinda realmente esta oportunidad para reunirnos, en donde ustedes estarán prácticamente haciendo intercambios de conocimientos, de sabiduría en relación a lo que es la propiedad de la tierra. La organización que inicia este trabajo el día de hoy, que es Ternur Facility, ha sido siempre la encargada de orientarles en relación a cómo se adquiere la titulación de la tierra, y esto le permite a todos los hombres y mujeres que están encaminados para estos procesos, para la certeza jurídica en sus comunidades, en sus países, en su estado. La certeza jurídica corresponde entonces a que el título de la propiedad de su tierra realmente les va a dar la oportunidad de ser los legítimos dueños, y en donde ustedes también harán esos intercambios en relación a su sistema de tenencia de tierra. Hay varios sistemas de tenencia de tierra en el ámbito de los pueblos indígenas, como son los ejidos, las tierras comunales, o podríamos decir también otros nombres que se utilizan en los pueblos andinos, la chacra. Puede ser también otros nombres que también se han creado de cara a lo que corresponde a la autonomía y sobre todo al territorio de los pueblos indígenas. Pedimos entonces muchas bendiciones para empezar este día con este curso en donde las sabidurías y las experiencias alimentarán más el conocimiento de ustedes, y considero que esto les va a facilitar caminos muy importantes para lograr entonces su tierra con título de propiedad. Pedimos entonces al corazón del cielo, al corazón de la tierra, al corazón del agua, al corazón del viento, que les bendiga, que les dé mucha claridad, que les dé muchas luces para poder salir con excelentes conclusiones en este curso. Y por eso les damos y les pedimos también a ustedes, a nombre de la Madre Tierra, a nombre de su producción, a nombre del viento y el agua, muchas bendiciones.
Thank you very much, Miss Otilia Luz de Coti. we now go to our opening panel. And we have with us for this panel speaking the Dr. Mirna Cunningham, the chair of the Tenure Facility Board, and our co-host for this event, Madeleine Foge from the Siani Network, the Swedish International Agricultural Network. Dr. Mirna Cunningham is a Mosquito from the Huanqui region of Nicaragua. She's a leading authority on indigenous and women's rights. She's the chair of the Tenure Facility Board and serves as the chair of the guiding committee of the Pawanka Fund, an indigenous-led grant maker promoting and protecting traditional knowledge, well-being, rights, and self-determined development of indigenous peoples. And with me, also Madeleine Foge from Siani, hosted by the Swedish International Environmental Institute. Madeleine has worked extensively with program, information, dissemination, capacity development, adult learning, women empowerment in Africa, especially Southern Africa, with a focus on Mozambique since 1993, before she moved back here. Experiences generated in that work, in her work in the field, has transformed into national strategies vital for Mozambique's achievement of the Millennium Development Goals. With gratitude, I greet you all who are here from the regions, from Asia, especially Indonesia, Nepal, and India, where our partners work, from Latin America, where our members from for our partners from the tenure facility are located in Panama, Peru, Guyana, Belize, and Colombia, and in Africa, where our partners are working in Liberia, Mali, DRC, and Mozambique. And as indigenous peoples, local and Afro-descendant community members, government partners, donors, supporter NGOs within the tenure facility circle. This is an annual event, and for the last 3 years, we have been hosted through the founder. This event has been hosted through the Rights and Resources Group and Rights and Resources Initiative, the founder of the tenure facility. A tall act to follow. But this year, the tenure facility planned a partner-hosted learning event. Initially, it was planned to be in Mozambique. We have agreed and hence actually give deep thanks to our partner Oram Nampula, who agreed to co-host this event and started preparations. But and yet, like many of the fate of the travels around the world, we adapt. Because of the lockdowns, we are here going online. Our objective for this learning event is to hear directly from all our partners how their projects have advanced during this year in the context of the current pandemic and the additional challenges it has brought to the implementation of processes and laws on land rights. They are here also to share innovations from challenges of uncertainty. What are the emerging applied solutions that they had found? How will this contribute to the building forward? The governance of territories is one of its deepest reflections, how they did that and how they are doing it into the future, especially the governance of community land. So what inspired them when these times have been difficult, and what taught them? What are those lessons? And what are the ways of working and collaborating? Our highest takeaway is to find certainty for us, for our donors, and most especially for our partners, that dedicated larger funds allocated directly to indigenous peoples, local community groups, Afro descendants is possible, most effective and best value for their contributions that we can and will be able to do together with NGOs that they trust, and also with the government that they partner with. And this shows a varied and very innovative set of approaches and pathways for Indigenous peoples led, local community led, Afro descendant led development. This is relational and intergenerational, responsible and integrated in the values of community, reciprocity, and interdependence. So, especially during these times of uncertainty, we are learning. With everyone standing resilient, how best can we support? How best can we support you? How best you can support each other, and you can help us and support us in the process. And this is to protect the land and territories and forests for all of us, for climate, for biodiversity, for our sustainability, and working with all actors, including the youth and the women, accompanying the NGOs and the agencies in government as well in the ecosystem of actors on land rights. I now turn this over to Myrna, Dr. Myrna Cunningham Kain. Myrna, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Al Sutra Titanyamni Lamkula Taramaikisna. I greet you in the Miskito language, the language of my community on the autonomous region in Nicaragua. Today we are discussing and we are starting this event on community resilience and land right progress. For Indigenous peoples, resilience means the strength of the heart, courage, self-support. And its expression is through self-governance, mobility. For a lot of our communities is the expression of resilience, land rights, water, language, traditional food systems. Community resilience is the collective ability to anticipate, prepare for, reduce impact, and overcome disasters and situations of adversity while building a bright future. And that is what we are trying to do through the International Land and Forest Tenure Facility, focusing on securing land and forest rights for Indigenous peoples and local communities. The International Land and Forest Tenure Facility is the first financial mechanism to exclusively fund projects working towards this goal, while reducing conflict, driving development from the point of view of Indigenous peoples and local communities, improving human rights, and mitigating the impacts of climate change. The fund tries to provide funding at scale directly to communities and their partners, build relationship with key actors within governments and the private sector, and provide the technical expertise required to implement tenure rights within existing laws and policies. Why was such a fund needed? Well, because there are more than 2.5 billion people from Indigenous peoples and local communities that live and manage more than 50% of the world's land area through customary or traditional systems, including some of the most important and biodiverse forest areas in the world. And despite the advances that we have in implementing legislation to secure our rights, we only have legal ownership of 10% of this land, with some degree of government recognized management rights over an additional 8%. So it is very important for our rights to be recognized so we can face poverty, environmental degradation, and conflict. In the current problems that we are facing in the world, and with a lot of pressure on indigenous lands, there is an urgent need for this dedicated fund. So it is very important to go through these processes of learning, because what do we want to learn? What do we need to learn from what we are doing in this process of the tenure facility? We want the tenure facility to become an effective instrument to demonstrate through best practices in development assistance and inspire more commitment and action to secure community land rights. We want to be able, through these lessons learned exercises, to see if we are really coordinating between civil society and government in order to implement reforms and remove bottlenecks to secure rights and livelihoods of communities. We want to see if we are really becoming a flexible and responsive fund to constituencies that need increased land tenure security. We want to be considered a trusted, flexible mechanism with a singular focus on direct financing of land and forest tenure work by indigenous peoples and local community organizations. We also want to see if what we are doing is really helping to increase a low-cost strategy to reduce forest carbon emissions. If we are becoming a means to reduce financial risk to investment and secure a sustainable supply of commodities, and a basic human right for the people who live on local resources. This tenure facility should give indigenous communities and local organizations an opportunity to increase the land and resources owned and managed by them. It's a unique opportunity to secure our fundamental rights and livelihood. And we would like to see through these exercises that we are beginning to work together with communities to really change the way in which they receive resources, that we can really accompany them in building this flexible way to access resources that is so needed by them. So I'm very, very happy to really open this discussion today, to really go through these 3 days to review if we are really walking together towards balance between human beings, nature, spirits, culture, and ourselves. We need this balance to be built through the support that we give through the tenure facility. We need to continue working together hand in hand, donors, local organizations, indigenous peoples, to gain courage in these times of uncertainty. If we do not gain courage, we cannot regenerate, we cannot restore, we cannot be resilient. We need to listen, to try to understand and respect, to do no harm, but work hand in hand with indigenous peoples and local community. That is the type of organization that we want to become. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Myrna. Now I turn you over to Madeline Forge from Siani. Welcome, Madeline.
Thank you so much, Nonette, and thank you, Myrna, for this very important opening. And imagine if we could have met in Mozambique, Nonette, maybe we can do it next year in Mozambique, in Nampula. I would love to be part of that and be almost local guide. So esteemed director and chair of the tenure facility, elder from the Maya communities, all the participants online, which we cannot see here, but I know that you are already more than 117. It's amazing. It's good. And so thank you for calling us, for being your partner and trusting us in co-organizing this so important partners meeting. It is a true privilege for us. Our collaboration on community land rights, forest indigenous communities actually date quite a long time back to 2014, when we, together with the board of the Rights and Resources Institute, organized a seminar in Gothenburg. And it was at this seminar that the tenure facility was presented, and the Swedish International Development Agency actually announced the support for this important facility. 2017, we joined hands again, and we organized a fantastic meeting in Stockholm with 250 people coming from a variety of, from all kinds of countries and continents. And Myrna, you were there as well, and Nonette. And I hope that maybe in the future we can also organize these kind of meetings again, because we need them when times it's challenging and we need to tie collaboration and bonds. So the first meeting was looking at bringing forward land rights. The second meeting was on commitments to implementation. And today we meet here with all your partners to really learn from them and learn about the progress on this part and how the tenure facility is actually able to support them in their work. But we are also here to hear about resilience in maybe one of the most challenging time that we are experiencing, at least for myself, my families and friends. A devastating pandemic is paralyzing the world, we learn to know. Climate change is affecting livelihoods and our production systems. 2020 is predicted to be the warmest in our time ever. Degradation of ecosystems, the loss of biodiversity. Your work is very, very important in protecting the values. But your work is also threatened. Securing land rights is a dangerous task. Your colleagues, friends are threatened, arrested, and even worse. Even though land rights of indigenous peoples are recognized by international conventions. So this is a tough pathway. In times like this, networks like Siani can be of help because we help people to connect with each other. We connect with members, but also other interested. And we thrive actually right now with the digital transformation because it makes us even more democratic. We can actually have these meetings and we can meet in another way that we could before because we didn't have resources. But now we can be more on the same level, which is very nice. And we don't need to work in isolation in our communities. We can connect with a cell phone. We can reach worldwide audiences with our learnings and testimonies. Siani works towards food security and nutrition with the means of sustainable agriculture. In the core of our work, our people's right to food is the baseline. But we recognize the complexities of food system, and we recognize that we need to work across sectors and disciplines. We take a system approach for understanding how to improve the current system best and with whom we can do most change and we can get change to happen. A food system's role is actually to recognize the role of culture and diversity and environment and how important they are to reach a goal for nutrition and health. Land rights are key for smallholders, indigenous people, and the communities to actually achieve these sustainable and equitable food systems. So yes, we are here and we are very honored to be able to partnering up with you. And we would very much like to walk together with you towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And even more now, this year, 2021, when we are heading for a year where sustainable food system will be a focus of the UN General Assembly next autumn. So thank you so much for letting us into your community, and thank you for partnering with us. Looking forward to the days ahead.
Thank you very much, Madeleine. Thank you. And Myrna, thank you very much. We now move on to listen to our partners, the donor community, represented to us to hear by our first speaker, Jan Van Beck from SIDA. He is the Senior Policy Specialist on Environment and Climate. His experience from his work both in Sweden and internationally on natural resource management, agriculture, biodiversity, freshwater and oceans is contributing to this work at SIDA, the policy support unit with climate and biodiversity, connected to the CBD negotiations and as an advisor for Sweden in the Green Climate Fund. We would like now to turn over to Jan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nonette, and thank you for giving me this excuse for a break from the ongoing Green Climate Fund board meeting. It feels very good to be here in an organization that are actually striving for the same goals. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to also say some words from SIDA's perspective here today. So in my work at SIDA, I often come across tenure and the role of indigenous peoples and local communities, the rights to resources, if it might be in the CBD negotiations or if it is assessing GCF funding proposals. I mean, work on tenure really combines many important parts for both a successful poverty alleviation work, but also for a sustainable use of natural resources and biodiversity and for climate as well. I mean, it's easy for us living in Sweden, for instance, to forget our dependence on land. Because we're not living off the land in that respect. Of course, we all get what we eat from the land, but we don't have the clear links anymore. I'm very fortunate to be able to grow my own potatoes and onions, at least in my own home garden. So I do know the hard work that is there. But we also need to recognize the rights to land, tenure, and securing tenure. And I think also it's important to look at the co-benefits that you can get from securing tenure rights. We also need to start, I think Madeleine is a little bit into this, to look a little bit more into food security and maybe sustainable economic development as well, as important parts of this. And I think tenure facilities is really uniquely placed. I think Myrna said so much good things about how and we at SIDA can support everything that was said more or less about the partnerships. And it's so important, I would say, to have the link with people on the ground and be able to draw it up to a policy level, to have the voice down, but also making people at the policy level hear what it is, how everything is. And as such, I make the tenure facility a strategic partner to SIDA. And even more so, given that we now just a couple of weeks ago got an assignment from the Swedish government to look more into biodiversity and ecosystems. And this assignment goes beyond specific contributions, and really the main goal is to strengthen and deepen the work of biodiversity and ecosystems in SIDA's total operations. So this is more or less a new way of looking at development cooperation and how we can combine that with biodiversity and ecosystems. And for me, Tenure Facility has such a clear role to play here. And I look so much forward to be able to get to tap a little bit on your knowledge and the experiences you have drawn of the program so far. And I also see that the theme that you have tomorrow on land rights and links to climate change and biodiversity just fits like the hand in a glove for the assignment that we have been given. So I look very much forward to work more with you. And I'm wishing you a good and productive few days, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jan. And thank you for the next speaker from one of our donor partners. We have Leif Jan Fosse. He's the Senior Advisor for the Norwegian International Climate and Forest Initiative, NICFI. He is responsible for Indigenous Peoples, safeguards, and NICFI's work in Southeast Asia, except Indonesia. Leif Jan, it's your floor now. Thank you. Do we have Leif Jan online? We may not have him online.
We are trying to connect with Leif.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
I think there is no audio. Video. Audio is okay, probably.
Leif, can you hear us?
Sorry about technical issues. I hope I'm not being out of tune now, but
No, we hear you. We hear you.
I've been dropped out twice now. Okay, let me try again to share my screen. No, that's not allowed. Okay, let's drop that and let me continue on to deliver a few messages.
You dropped off again. We apologize.
Out sharing my screen.
Okay, we cannot access the screen. At the moment, advice from the technical team.
We will request Liv to share his screen.
Mhm.
Am I still muted?
There you are. We can hear you. But
Okay, good.
Yeah, we can hear you. We haven't access to the screen.
Right. Let me try to do that. Well, then in the meantime, I've been talking for a few minutes. Nope, I don't seem to be able to do that. Yes, okay, let's try. All right. Can you see?
Not yet. Let me see.
Yes, we can see you.
Yeah, we can see.
You can
Yes,
proceed.
yes, we can see now. Yes.
Okay. So I'll not try to repeat myself, but what I was saying that we're a climate and forest unit in the Norwegian government. We have a specific mandate to reduce emissions from forests as a climate measure. And we have a mandate to do that by any means necessary. We have some 7 strategies to do that, and addressing the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities is one of our key strategies. And this is really in response to 5 simple demands from indigenous peoples. Stop killing us, quite simply. Recognize our land rights. Involve us in decisions that affect us on the basis of our free, prior, and informed consent. Give us access to climate finance. Make use of our traditional knowledge in the fight against climate change. And this, of course, we do this because it's the right thing to do. It's a human rights issue. It's a social justice issue, but it's also an effective approach to reducing emissions from forests. Quite simply because we recognize that indigenous peoples and local communities manage forests and other lands more effectively than other approaches that are out there. So this is both a utilitarian approach, but it's also a human rights approach in terms of what is right to do. I said that working with indigenous peoples and local community is part of NICFI's strategy, because we do work on there are other approaches as well, such as addressing forest crime, and working with governments, land use policies, working with financial markets, addressing commodity supply chain, and how they affect the land. Simple demands which we seek to address, and which we also try to give national community in international climate negotiations, and in the way that governments set up nationally determined contributions, for instance. And tenure facility we see as a key tool to address some of these issues. So addressing and securing tenure and land rights is of course key in the partner countries that NICFI works in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, but also to help give indigenous peoples a voice in the global biodiversity and climate talks and in other fora where environmental approaches to climate and forests are discussed. But most important is that they're partners in countries to be able to influence national forest and climate and rights policies. That is going beyond the current format of most Indigenous peoples organizations, but this is the kind of tool we would like to help see Tenure Facility become, to scale up the concerns and the rights claims and issues of Indigenous peoples to become government policies in the matters that affect them. And ultimately, getting the national determined contributions to the Paris Agreement. Sorry about all the technical issues. Be part of this learning event, which is quite unique to the way the Tenure Facility work, and we look forward to be with you for the next few hours and days, as time allows. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leif John. And I will not waste further time now. Thank you so much for sharing your screen there. We could see that. I'll turn you over to our facilitator, Fred Pierce, here, our moderator. Fred Pierce here, quickly, just briefly, is an English author and journalist based in London. He's a science writer reporting on the environment, popular science and development issues from 64 countries over the past 20 years. He specializes in global environmental issues, including water and climate change. He is our current moderator. Fred will now take over from here. And before I leave, I would just like to acknowledge the presence of all our board members, the Tenure Facility board members who are here. Gusta Molnar, Don Roberts, Samuel Ngifo, Abdon Nababan, Andy White, Eleni Quiro, Vicky Tauli Corpus, Juan Manuel Rojo, and Margaret Rugadia. Thank you. And also our advisory group. Over to you now, Fred.
Thank you, Nanette. It's a great thrill to be here. As you mentioned, some of the things that I do, I've written quite a lot about land rights issues over the years, so it's a real thrill for me to take part and moderate this event. Thank you very much. I remember first hearing about the idea of creating a tenure facility about 6 or 7 years ago from Andy White at the Rights and Resources Initiative in Washington, who we'll of course hear from on day 3. And it's come an awfully long way since then. It's like a fully grown body now. It's learning fast from events all over the world. And I'm very excited to be joining in with this. It's amazing to me that this is the 7th learning exchange after events in Washington and Dakar and Burkina Faso and Stockholm and Hyderabad and Bogota. And now we're online worldwide, trusting to the internet, trusting to the Wi-Fi to keep us communicated in these difficult times. So my job is to moderate. Now, mostly that means to keep quiet, ask a few questions, and try to keep everybody on time. I think that'll be the most difficult bit. Each day of the 3 days, we're going to have a short keynote address to introduce a theme of the day, followed by country presentations that will begin with a short film, followed by 10-minute conversations with speakers. Today, our theme is negotiating tenure amidst the pandemic. None of us can avoid that. We'll be hearing from keynote speaker Samuel Nguifo from Cameroon, who I've met a couple of times before. Then there will be films and conversations from Panama, from Indonesia, from Mali, and from Liberia today, and more tomorrow. And after that, the speakers will return for a panel session where you can pose questions to speakers through the Q&A facility that I hope you'll see on your screen. And then we'll close with a brief reflection on today's discussions and prepare for to come back tomorrow. I should remind you to keep your microphones and videos turned off throughout to preserve bandwidth. We're going to need all the bandwidth we can get. And please write those questions to the speakers whenever you like. There will be only so many questions that we can get through, but we'll do as much as we can in the panel session at the end of the day. So let's not waste any more time. First up today, to introduce the theme of how communities in his native Cameroon have pursued protecting their territories during the pandemic. We have Samuel, a board member of the Tenure Facility. He's a Goldman Prize winner and Secretary General of the Center for Environment and Development in Cameroon. Samuel, nice to have you here. I hope to hear your voice in a few seconds. I know we've had problems, but I hope you're there. I'm going to be strict about timekeeping here. You have 10 minutes to talk to us about the world as you see it. So please, Samuel, off you go. Do we have Samuel?
Fred, I'm afraid he's no longer in this room.
Samuel has disappeared. Do you expect Samuel back?
I hope so.
Okay.
He has been sending comments.
So I guess probably, well, let's give it a few seconds, but otherwise, apart from that, we'll, if he doesn't return, we'll pass on to our first country, which will be Panama, where we'll have a film, but I won't trigger the film for a few seconds in case Samuel does appear. Let me just reiterate what I said before to all the participants. Please stay muted and with your video off, except obviously when you're presenting, and panelists will know about that. And also when you have a chance, submit your questions to the panelists, including those introducing the proceedings already. Samuel, are you there? No, I think not. I am going to therefore ask, I'm going to move on to Panama, I think. This is our journey we're going to take around the world. We'll be going around the world several times over the next 3 days. We're going to begin in Central America, in Panama. And I'm hoping that we're going to now see our first film, a 5-minute film on the tenure issues there in the time of coronavirus. We're going to hear those in 5 minutes, for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back. And I hope we'll have some speakers, a couple of speakers, to talk to us for 10 minutes about Panama. Ah, Samuel, is that Samuel?
Yes.
Yes, Fred, I'm back.
Samuel, you're there. Okay, in which case we'll forget about Panama for a few minutes because we want to hear about Cameroon. Samuel, you have 10 minutes to talk us about pursuing the protection of indigenous territories in Cameroon during the time of the pandemic. And as I mentioned before, you have 10 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Fred, and thank you to all of you, the organizers. Samuel Ngifo, now at the boundary between Cameroon and Central African Republic, in a place where we are hosting more than 100,000 refugees.
Samuel, we cannot hear you now. Samuel, have we lost Samuel?
I believe we have, Fred.
Okay. I think it is going to be best, in which case, if we move on to Panama. I hope that we'll come back to Samuel and we can hear him talk properly later, I hope, when we re-establish connection. But if we can move on to Panama, here's our first film on tenure issues there in the time of the coronavirus. And as I mentioned before, we'll have a 5-minute film, and then we'll be back for discussions on that. And hopefully also we'll come back to Samuel. But I will pass over to the film now. Thank you.
Panama has some of the world's most progressive laws protecting indigenous rights. Yet in recent years, pressure has been growing on the country's indigenous peoples. From the private sector, the landless poor, and from the government's claims to protected areas, many of which overlap with indigenous territories. The Tenure Facility's partners, the National Coordinating Body of Indigenous Peoples in Panama, and the Program for Social Promotion and Development have been in close dialogue with the government, leading to a major breakthrough last year, where the Ministry of Environment recognized the legitimacy of indigenous lands overlapping conservation areas. Meanwhile, after years of internal divisions, the indigenous peoples of Panama are uniting once more and building their capacity, making them a serious force to be reckoned with.
Esa afectación que hemos tenido nosotros a nivel organizacional también nos ha ayudado a replantear posiciones para seguir atento a no ser impactado de una forma que pueda perjudicarnos mucho más de lo que nos ha perjudicado en todos estos aspectos de programas y proyectos a nivel de los congresos.
El inicio fue un poco difícil y hemos tratado de unir las reuniones virtuales con los técnicos y las autoridades para ver varios temas de que estamos confrontando sobre la pandemia. El número 2, estamos viendo que también hemos visitado algún momento dados algunos territorios tratando de cómo evitar el tema de la salud, y ha sido un poco difícil, pero hemos estado yendo lentamente en la visita de los territorios. La tercera que hemos tratado también es solicitar una extensión del proyecto de 6 meses.
El uso de la tecnología también fue clave, el tema de los celulares, se formaron grupos de WhatsApp y aquellos que no tenían pues se le iba a comunicar personalmente, todo esto cumpliendo el tema de la medida de seguridad que pues nos presentaba el Ministerio de Salud.
But while technology has played a central role in keeping communities connected, traditional practices have also become central to the response of many indigenous peoples who have turned to traditional medicines to try to mitigate the impacts of the virus.
Hoy podemos decir con propiedad de que el pueblo emberá de Alto Bayano fue y minimizó los impactos del virus gracias a la medicina tradicional. El uso de la medicina tradicional ha sido el soporte de las comunidades. No podemos decir científicamente que conseguimos la cura, pero sí podemos decir, bajo testimonios de personas que fueron afectados, que minimizamos los impactos tanto de respiración, dolor de cabeza, fiebre, diarrea, vómito, en las personas que fueron infectados con el virus, porque tenemos testimonio y no solamente del pueblo emberá.
While no one is suggesting that these medicines offer a cure to COVID-19, their use is a reminder of the extraordinary wisdom residing in indigenous cultures, which risks vanishing for good unless these cultures are able to survive and thrive.
Nadie sabe lo que viene después de esto y hay que preparar. Muchos de los territorios están preparados, capacitándose, inclusive poniendo sus grupos de lo botánico, preparando para poder tener esa medicina y así prepararse más adelante.
Nosotros a futuro pensamos y nos estamos preparando para tener una vida mucho más tranquila, para tener no sufrir ese impacto social que hemos sufrido en este inicio. Lo que buscamos con esto es que a través de las organizaciones comunitarias también podamos fortalecerlo para que cada uno esté haciendo su función como debe.
Okay, that was excellent. Thank you very much. Fascinating story about Panama in the time of the coronavirus. I think we're going to, unless somebody tells me different, I think we're going to leave Samuel to take his place in the panel at the end of the session, when we'll give him extra time to talk. And probably it is best now to move on to talk about Panama. We have two speakers from Panama, I'm hoping, both from the national coordinating body of the Indigenous Peoples of Panama. First, we have its president, Marcelo Guerra. Marcelo, we've seen in the film that you've done a great job in reviving and unifying the indigenous movement in Panama. A lot has happened in the last 5 years. How did you do this? And what are you most proud of what you've achieved in the last 5 years?
Bueno, buenos días a los organizadores de este gran importante del programa a nivel mundial. La unidad de los pueblos indígenas hemos logrado muchísimos. Hace 5 años, cuando la PI se encontraba totalmente desintegrada, había solamente 5 estructuras de las 2 estructuras indígenas de gobierno participando. Faltaban confianza y credibilidad. No teníamos una agenda propia, consensuada. Quienes estaban al frente decidimos en el 2015 dar prioridad a lograr que CONAPID llegase a ser el instrumento organizativo de todo para así verdaderamente poder luchar por nuestro territorio y por nuestro derecho. Fue un proceso largo, paciente y respetuoso. Actualizamos el estatuto y el reglamento interno. Desde allí decidimos la presentación anual obligatorio de informe narrativo y financiero gestión. También participamos en cada congreso y consejos de los indígenas, dando cara a la necesaria rendición de cuentas. Incluimos a los no miembros en capacitaciones, encuentros y reuniones de alto nivel con las autoridades del gobierno panameño. Poco a poco fuimos estableciendo espacio, participación para todas las autoridades indígenas. Fue un trabajo de hormiga, pero conjunto, en la unidad. Pero lo logramos. Hoy todas las instancias de gobierno de los 7 pueblos indígenas volvimos a la casa de todos para que el bien de todos de la CONAPID, unido, podemos hacer una mejor defensa y de nuestro derecho, también cumplir mejor nuestros deberes como ciudadanos panameños e indígenas. Si hay unidad, más atención que el gobierno escuchara a los ministros y viceministros. Ha empezado a reunirse con nosotros, el Ministerio de Gobierno y toda la instancia del Ministerio como Mi Ambientes. Han firmado acuerdos de colaboración y establecido mesas de trabajo con nosotros. Un elemento fortaleza que contamos es que el mayor porcentaje de bosque y biodiversidad de Panamá se encuentra en nuestros territorios. Y somos los principales responsables de administración y buen manejo. Por lo tanto, hay que estar preparado y capacitar a jóvenes, a dirigentes, tanto hombres como mujeres, para defender a su pasión y ultrajes. Múltiples estudios realizados recientemente por el Banco Mundial, Agencia de las Naciones ONU, demuestra que la seguridad territorial de los pueblos indígenas en forma de conservación más rentable, suficiente y segura. El caso de Panamá. Nuestro pueblo sigue protegiendo a la naturaleza, beneficiando al planeta en las luchas de todos contra el cambio climático. Con el apoyo de TF, se ha logrado fortalecer los derechos colectivos sobre 1.362.000 1000 hectáreas, que tiene un 67% de los bosques tropicales del país dentro de territorios indígenas amenazados por recuperación ilegal, aún en tiempo cuarentena por el COVID-19. Sabiendo que cobijamos a los bosques, podemos firmar nuestros éxitos como pueblos indígenas con seguridad territorial. De esa manera, hemos seguido trabajando en la gobernanza, manejando los territorios que están en interés de todos indígenas y no indígenas. CONAPI está en posición facilitar a nivel nacional un programa indígena que trabajaría con el gobierno asegurando los territorios, su manejo sostenible y bienestar de sus pobladores. Siempre vamos a recordar agradeciendo el acompañamiento solidarios del TF que nos permitimos llegar a este pueblo. Pero ahora tendremos que avanzar a un nivel y a una escala que trasciende las posibilidades del mandato TF. Por ello, se espera que estos eventos nos dé luces y camino, cómo podrían continuar progresando, apoyando a nuestros hermanos indígenas. Progresando y resistiendo en el camino que CONAPI empezó de mucho tiempo, defendiendo el derecho y caminar más de 25 años, por el que nuestro pueblo viene recorriendo y defiende sus derechos ancestralmente. Así que estamos dando ese camino para que los logros sigue siendo y los pueblos indígenas de los 7 sigue siendo escuchados y defendiendo el territorio a nivel nacional. En esta parte quiero decirles, hemos seguido defendiendo, reuniéndonos, que el gobierno, el Estado, lo escuche, los ministros, y que por razones, pues, que gracias al proyecto TF hemos venido escuchando las voces y defendiendo los intereses de los territorios de los pueblos indígenas antes del proyecto, y seguiremos siendo y defendiendo los intereses de los territorios nacionales, de los pueblos indígenas.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Our audience will have realized that you are not Marcelo Guerra, but you are Manuel Martinez, who is the coordinator of the body's tenure facility project. Thank you very much for that. We're now going to move on from Panama across the world. Right across the world, we're going to move to Southeast Asia, and we're going to introduce a film, our 5-minute film or 6-minute film, I think, on Indonesia. And after that, we have 4 people to speak, I hope. Let's introduce our film on Indonesia.
Fred, we have a bit of a miss there. There is still one speaker. That was correct. That was Marcelo. And we have Manuel waiting as his turn.
Marcelo, please. I'm sorry to have missed you, but you weren't on my screen when I saw. But now, please, you have the floor.
Sí, buenos días a todos y buenas tardes y buenas noches en diferentes partes del mundo. Agradecemos la oportunidad que nos da para compartir nuestra experiencia, especialmente los resultados y las prioridades y nuestros avances. Tenemos una comarca recién creada a través de ley que hemos empujado a través de este proyecto, la comarca Naso-Terdi, que alcanza una superficie de 160.616 hectáreas que ya hemos garantizado y está en proceso de firma y de objeción o no de parte de la Corte Suprema. También tenemos una resolución que da paso a las titulaciones colectivas de tierra, que a través de 8 sesiones de mesas interinstitucionales que hemos logrado trabajar con el gobierno para que se pueda dar este proceso. 4 expedientes completos de titulación colectiva para una superficie total de 36.000 hectáreas en adelante. Igual 10 territorios indígenas que hemos avanzado en el fortalecimiento de los instrumentos de tenencia. ¿Cuáles son nuestras prioridades actuales? Nosotros tenemos interés de seguir impulsando este proceso de implementar al 100% la resolución que nos da oportunidad para manejar las áreas protegidas que mencionaba el señor presidente Marcelo Guerra, que están dentro de territorios indígenas y necesitan ser manejadas de manera dentro del cosmovisión indígena. También se requiere una continuidad de la asistencia financiera para consolidar los progresos. Hemos avanzado ya, pero necesitamos consolidarlos. Aquellos avances que están relacionados o vinculados a planes de manejo de uso sostenible de los bosques, porque no solamente es asegurar la tenencia, sino asegurar los bosques y garantizar que éstas puedan ser conservadas, presentando denuncias de ocupación ilegal, demarcándolas, delimitando estos territorios, garantizando en algunos casos los estatus legales de aquellos que hacen falta, estableciendo equipos de trabajo tipo guardabosques o vigilancia, cuerpo de vigilancia local que pueda dar o garantizar o frenar la deforestación y la degradación en estos territorios indígenas. Los procesos técnicos y administrativos de titulaciones pendientes también deben ser continuadas y garantizando estos territorios que tienen ocupación tradicional ancestral, lograremos un mejor progreso para los territorios indígenas en Panamá. Estamos comprometidos en continuar con el fortalecimiento de los congresos y consejos, capacitando a las autoridades, especialmente sus líderes, sus lideresas y todos los jóvenes que estarían dispuestos a dar este apoyo. Dentro de las oportunidades que nosotros tenemos es la solidaridad que hemos alcanzado unificar, que mencionaba el presidente, consolidarla y mantenerla. Contar con una agenda clara, consensuada, para poder presentársela al gobierno y trabajar de manera conjunta estos procesos. Estos son los aspectos más importantes que nos conciernen en temas de tenencia y seguridad territorial en Panamá. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Manuel. I apologize for the confusion over your names, but you heard first from Marcelo, I believe, and then from Manuel. You've both got us off to a great start. I think now we're moving right across the planet. We're going from Central America to Southeast Asia to our next film on Indonesia. And then we have, I hope, 4 speakers to discuss the many activities on tenure rights in Indonesia.
Indonesia has the 3rd largest tropical rainforest in the world and an estimated 50 to 70 million indigenous people, around a 1/5 of the total population. Working with local NGOs, tenure facilities partners, AMAN, BRWA, and KPA have created a grassroots model for agrarian reform, which engages entire communities, balancing the need for conservation, economic prospects, and the life of indigenous people. When coronavirus hit Indonesia, some communities were able to use this crisis as a strengthening tool for their local collectives.
Dan kami sebagai perempuan adat membuat suatu kebun kolektif untuk bisa dikelola oleh perempuan adat. Meskipun kebun kolektif ini sudah kami lakukan dari tahun 2018, tetapi hanya segelintir perempuan adat yang melakukannya. Tapi setelah adanya pandemi ini yang dampaknya sangat terasa bagi perempuan adat yang bekerja di luar, perempuan adat yang tadinya bekerja sekarang bergabung di kebun kolektif yang kami tanami dengan sayur-sayuran.
Like the women on this farm, Tenure Facilities partners were also able to adapt quickly.
During this pandemic, from the beginning, since March, we already committed to do community lockdown, and during this time, community has been started to stockpile our food, continue to plant new seeds, and we are preparing for the more crisis to come, and we are ready for that. We also show our solidarity as our strength. We help each other. We provide food to our neighbors or even people in the cities who doesn't have enough food during this crisis.
But unfortunately, it did have an impact on the implementation of the project.
In this situation, the all area, district and province level stop to discussion, arrange the workshop, discussion the big people like that. So we try to provide data and dialogue with the the Zoom meeting, virtual meeting with the province on district government to provide the data of Indigenous People territory. We also modified about the methodology of the verification and validation of Indigenous People territory maps.
Aman were ahead of the game, having already put a plan in place for a situation such as coronavirus.
At least in last 5 years, we already have this strategy in place if something happened to us. During this pandemic, we triggered what we call emergency response situations. We already have adopted a protocol, a policy in 2018, and we are implementing that for now. We had to adapt, we had to respond, and that's so actually that Indigenous peoples and Indigenous organizations, we are very resilient.
In addition, the Tenure Facilities partners are also looking at how to build back better, using the crisis of coronavirus to rethink how land reform can solve other problems, and how to build a new economy that is based at the local level.
Yang menariknya adalah ternyata situasi COVID-19 ini tentu tidak hanya soal melakukan adaptasi terhadap pendekatan-pendekatan kegiatan, tetapi kita menemukan cara baru bagaimana mengatasi krisis pangan dan bagaimana gerakan reforma agraria KPA bersama anggota-anggota Serikat Petani bisa berkontribusi memberikan solusi mengenai bagaimana kita menjawab krisis pangan yang terjadi dan dialami oleh masyarakat di Indonesia.
Fascinating film. We're going to hopefully have our 4 speakers now from Indonesia, which means that time is very tight for them. 2.5 to 3 minutes is all the time they're going to get. First, we have, you'll have seen her on the film, Ruka Sombilingi, who's the Secretary General of Aman, the Indigenous Peoples Alliance, which is, I believe, the world's largest such organization, which is a hell of a claim to make and entirely justified. Ruka, you have a movement to bring youth home from the cities to their communities in Indonesia. I wonder if you'd like to talk to us about that and certainly what inspires them to come back. Ruka.
Ya, terima kasih Fred. Sebelumnya izinkan saya menyapa Manasu Moraka, salam adat saya, orang Toraja. Dan dari Nusantara Indonesia, salam Nusantara untuk seluruh saudara-saudari sesama Indigenous Peoples dimanapun berada, kepada para sahabat masyarakat adat, dan kepada para donors yang selama ini sudah berjalan bersama dengan masyarakat adat. Apa yang dicapai oleh masyarakat adat selama ini secara global, khususnya di Indonesia, tidak terlepas dari dukungan dari semua pihak. Dan untuk itu kami merasa menjadi manusia yang sangat beruntung. Terima kasih sekali lagi. Berbicara tentang anak muda pulang kampung, ini sesungguhnya bukan lahir dari inisiatif kami di organisasi, tapi ini adalah inisiatif dari anak-anak muda sendiri. Mereka sendiri yang memenuhi panggilan dari kampung halaman, dari tanah leluhur, dan mereka pulang dan menerima mandat dari tanah leluhurnya. Jadi ini adalah pekerjaan yang di Aman kami hanya membantu memfasilitasi jika ada hal-hal yang mereka inginkan, atau menjadi teman berdiskusi, teman seperjalanan mereka untuk bergandengan tangan kalau di masa-masa sulit, karena ada banyak sekali tantangan yang masih dihadapi oleh anak-anak muda yang sedang pulang kampung. Ini gerakan yang sudah terjadi di dalam hampir 10 tahun terakhir, dan yang menginisiasi ini dan memulai ini adalah anak-anak muda sendiri. Mereka adalah jawaban untuk di masa depan. Mereka membalik berbagai doktrin yang selama ini ditanamkan melalui pendidikan dan media bahwa kehidupan itu hanya di kota. Mereka mengatakan tidak. Kehidupan itu ada di wilayah adat kami. Kami menjadi manusia kalau kami hidup mandiri, bersahabat, kalau kami berada di wilayah adat kami. Jadi mereka punya semboyan untuk pulang, bergerak, pulang, menjaga dan mengelola wilayah adat. Nah, pandemi ini secara khusus menunjukkan bahwa wilayah adat itu adalah sebenarnya penyangga bumi, penyangga dunia. Jadi selama pandemi seperti yang dilihat tadi ada yang menyampaikan bahwa dunia ini sedang lumpuh, bagi masyarakat adat tidak. Ini we are having our time. Kami justru sedang menikmati masa-masa ini, karena ini adalah masa untuk pertama dengan lockdown kami memastikan tidak ada virus masuk ke wilayah adat, dan kegiatan di dalam wilayah adat masih normal. Masih tetap ke kebun, masih tetap berladang, masih tetap ke laut, masih bertanam, menghitung pangan, dan ini menjadi kegiatan. Ini adalah masa untuk melakukan ritual, adalah masa untuk kembali mempelajari segala pengetahuan dan kebijaksanaan masyarakat adat. Saatnya untuk kembali belajar menenun, saatnya untuk kembali belajar dan merevitalisasi benih-benih lokal. Ini di kota lockdown dikenal dengan work from home, kerja dari rumah. Di kampung, di masyarakat adat itu tidak dikenal, karena kalau tidak keluar rumah, di kampung tidak keluar rumah berarti kita tidak akan makan. Nah, inilah yang menunjukkan bahwa kita harus kembali melihat situasi kita saat ini. Kita harus melakukan perubahan besar. Anak-anak muda sudah memimpin kita kembali ke kampung, dan kenapa menjadi penting supaya pengakuan terhadap masyarakat adat dan haknya atas wilayah adat, hak atas keberadaannya menjadi penting, karena kami tidak hanya menjaga diri sendiri, tapi kami menjaga bumi, dan kami juga siap untuk terus memberi makan umat manusia di bumi ini. Dari pandemi menunjukkan bahwa bukan Monsanto yang memberi makan dunia, tapi masyarakat adat, petani, dan khususnya dalam masa krisis, masyarakat adat dan petani lah yang menunjukkan solidaritas. Perusahaan-perusahaan itu entah kemana perginya. Ini menunjukkan juga bahwa struktur ekonomi global saat ini itu tidak lagi mungkin kita lakukan. Kita harus membuat perubahan paradigma yang selama ini hanya menjadi jargon. Sudah saatnya Kalau tidak, kita sedang menenggelamkan, sedang memusnahkan satu-satunya rumah yang kita punya bersama. Nah, ini kenapa penting kita mendukung gerakan anak muda untuk pulang kampung, karena mereka lah masa depan kita. Masa depan bumi ada di anak muda. Dan selama ini, anak-anak muda ini banyak sekali bekerja dengan perempuan adat. Jadi ini juga menunjukkan yang kita perjuangkan selama ini, yang kita percayai selama ini, bahwa perempuan adat dan anak muda itu adalah tulang punggung masyarakat adat, itu sedang terjadi, sedang terbukti. Nah, demikian pesan dari saya, kita harus bersama-sama berkomitmen untuk mengakui hak-hak masyarakat adat, memastikan berbagai kebijakan dan hukum ada di masyarakat adat, untuk masyarakat adat, memastikan dukungan finansial yang cukup untuk menggerakkan semua ini, dan dengan demikian kita sedang menjaga masyarakat adat dan kita sedang menjaga diri sendiri, menjaga bumi, menjaga peradaban manusia. Terima kasih dari saya, sekali lagi terima kasih buat teman-teman di Tenure Facility, Nonet, Paula, dan Samuel, dan juga para Board of Directors dan Advisors. Salam hormat dari Aliansi Masyarakat Adat Nusantara. Bongi Melo, selamat malam.
Thank you very much, Ruka. That was excellent. Thank you. We're going to move on quickly to Kazmita Widodo, who's the head of the Indigenous Territory Registration Body in charge of mapping ancestral lands. We all know how important mapping is to restoring territories. So Kazmita, please tell us about your work in the villages and with district leaders in mapping work in Indonesia.
Baik, terima kasih. Salam Nusantara untuk semua. Selamat malam. Pak Fred, kami dalam masa pandemi ini mengalami beberapa hambatan dalam memprovide atau menyiapkan data-data terkait dengan pengakuan wilayah adat, peta-peta, dan juga data informasi sosial terkait dengan masyarakat adat. Namun kami tidak berhenti. Kami memperkuat para anak muda, fasilitator lokal untuk bersama-sama masyarakat di komunitas-komunitas adat untuk terus menyiapkan data-data yang diperlukan yang bisa kita sampaikan kepada pemerintah di tingkat kabupaten maupun provinsi. Jadi proses verifikasi, validasi terhadap data-data yang akan kita sajikan, kami lakukan secara online dengan menggunakan teknologi smartphone yang mereka punya untuk menyampaikan informasi terkait dengan apa-apa yang kita butuhkan di dalam penyiapan data tersebut. Yang kedua, dalam konteks untuk percepatan pengakuan wilayah adat di tingkat kabupaten maupun provinsi, kami melakukan upaya-upaya dialog, melakukan diskusi secara online dengan pemerintah di provinsi dan beberapa kabupaten. Ini menjadi dasar penting untuk menyiapkan satu regulasi di tingkat provinsi maupun kabupaten untuk menyiapkan satu upaya percepatan pengakuan masyarakat adat dan wilayah-wilayah adat di Indonesia. Sehingga kami bisa membuat satu kesepakatan kerjasama dengan pemerintah di kabupaten dan provinsi untuk menyiapkan mereka bekerja menyambut apa yang akan diajukan oleh masyarakat adat terkait dengan peta wilayah adat, terkait dengan informasi sejarah keberadaan masyarakat adat dan bagaimana mereka mengelola wilayah adat dengan baik. Ini satu strategi yang kami lakukan dalam masa pandemik ini, sehingga data-data yang tersedia bisa terus mengalir kepada pemerintah, dan pemerintah terus merespon untuk menyiapkan satu kebijakan, satu penetapan keberadaan dan pengakuan masyarakat adat dan juga wilayah adatnya. Saya kira dalam masa pandemik yang belum tahu kita kapan akan berakhir, proses-proses ini harus terus dilakukan, dan kerja-kerja basis di tingkat para fasilitator muda di tingkat lapangan itu menjadi sangat penting untuk dikuatkan sehingga mereka bisa terus melakukan proses-proses komunikasi, dialog, dan menyampaikan hal penting terkait dengan pengakuan masyarakat adat kepada pemerintah kabupaten dan provinsi. Demikian, terima kasih, Fred.
Thank you, Kazmita. That was excellent. Thank you. I have on my list to speak a government official, Yuli Nugroho. I don't see him on my screen. Can anybody tell me if he's here?
Yes, he is here.
He is. Oh, okay. Okay. We now have him. Many thanks. Mr. Nugroho, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. I think from Adat Forest, determination of Adat Forest is a series of a long process from various stakeholders to encourage recognition of Adat territories. One important process was the visit of my minister in Matawa Kajang on 8 August in 2060, 4 years after Constitutional Court's decision number 35 to ensure comprehensive decision making in the determination of Adat Forest. At that time, the minister stated that the process at Minister of the Environment and Forestry is complete. The event is planned and designed in my unit, and then we operated to Adat Forest, and we have 9 very first time Adat Forest in Indonesia in 2060 by state for Adat Forest. Since then, progress of the Adat Forest is being achieved, although this was not always easy. Open discussion between the central government, our ministry, with subnational government like province and a district, and a representative of Adat community and civil society organization like AMAN, like BRWA, Ms. Ruka, Mr. Dodo is my friend too. Then the result of those discussion have to continue to follow up, and Adat Forest acknowledgement now we have 67 unit or communities with 52,002 hectare, almost maybe under the 100,000 hectare, but it's still ongoing to do that. And then we have 36,000 household or beneficiaries in 13 provinces. We have Adat Forest from 34 provinces in Indonesia. That the situation of Adat Forest in Indonesia, and also to have more Adat Forest, we have indicative Adat Forest. We have pasted now with almost 1 million hectare or 94 communities or indigenous people with that indicative Adat Forest by December last year. We have a process and verification still go on with offline or online. Sometimes we mandate or help with a friend in local authority like district and province to verification, and with us in Jakarta with online or like Zoom and other application. And still we catch up the gap with our Adat Forest with Mr. Dodo with BRWA. We have almost 1 million. Mr. Dodo have 13 million hectare Adat Forest in their map. We trying to the best we could to catch up the gap, and I think for all that my speak, politics and a strong leadership in bureaucracy is still the key, and I think to make indigenous people living better and well well protected with area and local wisdom. I think it's my presentation, Mr. Fred. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really very interesting, and I'm very pleased to have had a government representative to talk on these issues. Thank you. Our final speaker on Indonesia is Dewi Kartika, the Secretary General of the Consortium for Agrarian Reform, referred to as the KPA in the film. Dewi, can you tell us how reform has progressed during the pandemic? Is it bringing people together in solidarity? What's been going on?
Ya, thank you, Fred. Selamat malam semuanya. Senang sekali bertemu dalam pertemuan di dalam tender facility ini. Ya, jadi di masa pandemi ini memang KPA tetap mendorong proses-proses bagaimana pengakuan tanah-tanah secara khusus tanah yang diperjuangkan oleh petani itu tetap berjalan dalam konteks perjuangan reforma agraria di Indonesia. Tetapi memang ketika ada masa pandemi, kita tahu bahwa secara global telah menimbulkan kekhawatiran krisis pangan yang terjadi di banyak negara di seluruh dunia, termasuk di Indonesia, karena adanya gangguan produksi dan rantai pasokan pangan secara global, termasuk secara nasional. Dan selama pandemik, otomatis sistem pangan di Indonesia terganggu, karena sejumlah pangan pokoknya kita masih bergantung pada pangan impor. Nah, lalu apa yang dilakukan oleh gerakan reforma agraria dalam mengatasi ancaman krisis pangan yang tidak hanya dialami oleh masyarakat miskin, bahkan di kelompok perkotaan, terutama komunitas miskin di perkotaan seperti gerakan buruh. Jadi sebenarnya masa pandemi ini memberikan banyak pelajaran kepada kita bahwa pertanian pangan lokal dan pertanian rakyat itu sangat penting, dan kenapa reforma agraria itu juga penting untuk disegerakan, karena ternyata justru pertanian-pertanian yang dimiliki oleh komunitas petani, masyarakat adat lah yang mempunyai daya resiliensi yang kuat, yang teruji selama masa pandemi. Terbukti ketika terjadi krisis ekonomi dan rantai pasokan pangan dari negara-negara luar terhambat, justru petani-petani, keluarga-keluarga petani yang menjadi produsen pangan skala kecil itu justru yang menjadi front line, yang menjadi garda terdepan untuk memasok pangan termasuk ke kota. Jadi yang dilakukan oleh gerakan reforma agraria adalah bagaimana membangun satu gerakan solidaritas lumbung pangan. Jadi kita bersyukur petani-petani masih mempertahankan lumbung pangannya di banyak desa, di banyak tempat yang meskipun hak atas tanahnya banyak yang belum diakui dan masih memperjuangkan hak atas tanahnya melalui reforma agraria, tetapi justru pandemi menunjukkan kita cara yang tidak biasa, yang extraordinary, bagaimana kita bisa berkontribusi mengatasi krisis pangan yang dihadapi oleh krisis masyarakat miskin di perkotaan, terutama dengan buruh. Jadi selama pandemi di Indonesia terjadi gerakan rakyat membantu rakyat, dan bagaimana pangan itu bisa dimobilisasi dari desa ke kota, sehingga yang selama ini relasi antara desa dan kotanya saling menghisap, tidak menguntungkan, justru menjadi sangat saling memperkuat misalnya antara petani dengan gerakan buruh. Jadi kita melakukan solidaritas pangan, banyak desa-desa yang sebenarnya bisa bertahan selama masa pandemi justru memobilisasi bantuan pangannya ke kota-kota dan membantu buruh, karena di Indonesia terjadi pemutusan hubungan kerja, jadi banyak buruh. Sampai dengan Juli ada 3,5 juta buruh yang mengalami pemutusan hubungan kerja, artinya kehilangan pekerjaan, dan itu bagaimana cara kita, gerakan reforma agraria, membantu krisis pangan yang dihadapi oleh keluarga-keluarga buruh, termasuk keluarga miskin di perkotaan. Jadi bagaimana gerakan solidaritas pangan yang didorong oleh kita, itu bisa menghubungkan antara petani dengan buruh dalam gerakan aksi produksi, distribusi, dan konsumsi pangan. Lalu bagaimana kita caranya memutus mata rantai distribusi pangan agar yang tadinya berbiaya tinggi menjadi lebih murah, dan pangan sehat itu bisa diakses oleh semua kalangan masyarakat, termasuk kalangan kelas bawah. Kemudian bagaimana membangun modal sosial dan modal ekonomi yang berbasiskan kerakyatan itu bisa menghidupkan masa-masa krisis. Jadi justru selama masa pandemi kita tidak hanya menunjukkan bahwa daya resiliensi itu bisa kuat di tingkatan petani, tapi gerakan rakyat membantu rakyat itu bisa bekerja efektif. Bahkan sekarang setelah kita berhasil selama 7 bulan memasok pangan ke kota-kota, terutama ke kelompok buruh yang mengalami kehilangan pekerjaan dan komunitas miskin di perkotaan, kita sekarang sedang memasuki masa membangun pabrik beras, salah satunya untuk komoditas beras. Jadi gerakan reforma agraria sedang menguji coba pembangunan pabrik beras untuk memutus rantai distribusi sehingga masyarakat miskin di kota, terutama buruh, itu bisa mengakses makanan yang sehat tetapi dengan harga yang bisa terjangkau. Sehingga sebenarnya gerakan solidaritas pangan ini bisa menginspirasi gerakan lainnya untuk saling membantu. Tidak hanya di desa, tidak hanya menjaga petani dan masyarakat adat, tapi bagaimana gerakan reforma agraria bersama petani masyarakat adat bisa berkontribusi untuk mengatasi krisis pangan yang dihadapi oleh masyarakat miskin perkotaan. Dan sekarang kita meningkatkan scaling up bagaimana mengkonkretkan bentuk solidaritas ekonomi itu yang sifatnya bisa memperoleh margin keuntungan antara gerakan rakyat, gerakan petani, dan gerakan buruh. Dan tentu ini sebenarnya menjadi cara kita untuk menunjukkan kepada pemerintah dan kepada publik bahwa justru harus produk lokal lah, produk pangan lokal lah yang harus dijaga, diversifikasi pangan menjadi relevan, dan kenapa hak atas tanah itu menjadi esensial untuk segera diakui, karena justru petanilah yang menjadi frontline dari krisis pangan yang ada selama ini. Mungkin itu Fred, terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Dewi. That was inspirational to hear about the smallholders feeding the country. We're now going to move on very swiftly. We had scheduled a break, but we are through our break time, so we're going to carry straight on. We're going to move on now to West Africa, to Mali, where land tensions have been involved in recent conflicts there. So here is our film on Mali.
It is difficult for information to reach remote rural areas in Mali, meaning that communities are often cut off from the outside world. A lack of awareness over land rights has created tensions over land, in turn fueling armed conflict in the country. The Tenure Facilities Partners, the national coordinating body of peasant organizations Mali, along with other grassroots organizations, have been working to tackle this. At mass gatherings, they have been explaining land rights to whole villages, using street theater to educate. Building on a successful pilot project, they have been scaling up the role of local land commissions to resolve land disputes. The emergence of COVID-19 has changed everything.
Un peu réduit les mouvements de collectivité, parce que en fait, qui parle de collectivité parle de regroupement souvent, parce que la collectivité, ça regroupe beaucoup de villages, beaucoup de personnes. Donc quand ça limite le nombre de participants des regroupements, vraiment ça réduit un peu quand même l'intervention des collectivités dans différentes localités.
Comme vous le savez déjà, au niveau de toutes les administrations du Mali, Covid-19 a vraiment impacté le bon fonctionnement. Ça veut dire que Cathy ne fait pas exception. Toutes les collectivités territoriales que nous accompagnons ici, en tout cas, ce qui me concerne, dans l'arrondissement central, nous avons 8 collectivités territoriales, y compris la commune urbaine de Cathy.
With drastic measures taken by the Malian authorities and travel restricted, our partners have been confronting new realities.
L'équipe a organisé une mission sur le terrain pour pouvoir voir dans quel contexte les communautés vivent, comment ces communautés-là perçoivent le Covid et comment elles y réagissent. Et cela nous a permis justement de pouvoir élaborer un plan d'action Covid. En un deuxième temps, nous avons eu des réflexions de second niveau très approfondies avec nos partenaires pour pouvoir relancer les activités. Et cette relance des activités nous a permis de redéfinir certaines stratégies et une certaine façon de travailler.
This has included COVID training for all staff, as well as for community focal points, who have been able to pass on information and training to thousands of people in remote areas. Keeping communities informed as the pandemic continues will be crucial work.
Quand on voit la plus grande partie au niveau des villages, effectivement, les gens aujourd'hui ne croient pas beaucoup à cette pandémie-là. C'est au niveau des villages qu'on sent beaucoup qu'il y a quelque chose. Mais vraiment, il faut vraiment une grande campagne de sensibilisation au niveau de ces villages, mais aussi de nous appuyer également comment mettre en place au niveau de ces villages-là les mesures barrières, et notamment le lavage des mains à savon.
Vous savez, quand vous faites une action de sensibilisation, d'information, de contact pour que les gens puissent aller dans une dynamique de partage, d'inclusion, de prise de décision, vous avez besoin d'être en contact permanent avec les communautés. Donc ces contacts-là ont été fortement perturbés, donc ça a fait qu'on était obligé de revoir notre stratégie et notre façon de travailler en réadaptant au nouveau contexte de Covid. Donc d'autres outils, d'autres moyens ont été faits, on a fait une évaluation de la situation et on a adapté pour pouvoir continuer à faire les activités qui étaient possibles.
That's excellent. Very, very interesting indeed. Thank you. Now we have two speakers from Mali. Both are from the National Coordinating Body of Peasant Organizations in Mali. First, I believe we have its president, Ibrahima Coulibaly. If you're there, Ibrahima, can you tell me how the recent political crises have influenced work on resolving the many local land issues?
Fred, both Brahima and Ibrahima are together in the same, using the same Zoom name. Mm-hmm. So just, you know.
Yeah. Okay, do we have Ibrahima? Are they coming? I think we may have a breakdown in communication, but I would appreciate some advice. Can we expect them or should we move on?
Can we just give them a couple 30 seconds or so? They are online and they're just trying to open their audio.
Okay, we will wait. We'll be patient. I'm not very good at that, but I will try my best.
Maybe in the meantime, I can remind all the attendees to please mute putting off the original language of the speakers so you can listen to the interpretation better. Thank you.
As well as Ibrahim Coulibaly, who, as I said, is the president of the National Coordinating Body of Peasant Organizations. We also hope to have Brahima Traore, who's been the coordinator of the Tenure Facility Project in Mali. But I wonder whether we have them. Aha. How are we doing? Are we making progress?
Hi, Brahima and Ibrahima. Could you please let us know if you can hear us?
Is Brahima or...
Sorry, Fred.
Brahima or Ibrahima. I think you're going to be on the same link, but
Yes, they're currently trying to connect. I think it's some connection issues from there.
We'll give them a few more seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And after Mali, we will move on to Liberia, where, as many of you will know, there have been a long and complicated history of land tenure rights disputes involving a long civil war, but we hope the world has been moving on since then in recent times, and there's certainly been some very progressive legislation in Liberia. But in Mali, there are still ongoing simmering conflicts, some of which are related to land and some of which clearly have other origins, but we're hoping we can hear more on that.
Fred and the production team, may I suggest we move on to Liberia and
Yes.
we try to help Rahima and Ibrahima at the backstage. We will have them again as panelists in the last panel of the day. Okay,
that does sound sensible. Thank you very much. Okay, well, I hope we'll get back to Mali because there's a very interesting story to be told there, but let us move on to Liberia. So not far, actually. We just moved towards the coast in West Africa, away from the interior to the coast. But here is our film on Liberia.
After decades of conflict over land, which helped fuel a bitter civil war, in 2018, a new land law was passed in Liberia, which means that rural communities had the chance to gain greater control over their ancestral lands. The Tenure Facility's partners, Foundation for Community Initiatives, Liberia Land Authority, and the Sustainable Development Institute are guiding communities through the process of self-identification and registration that will mean more secure tenure, more clarity, and lower tensions over land use and access. The Tenure Facility-backed project has placed the role of women at the heart of strengthening the capacity of these communities to title and manage their lands. But the arrival of COVID-19 has created severe challenges. Lockdown rules have left rural families short of vital food and medicine. And economic pressures have seen an ominous rise in sexual and gender-based violence.
Among many West African countries that is currently experiencing the COVID-19. We recorded our first case on the 16th of March 2020. Because of that, things happen at the level of the communities. Women in particular face difficulties in accessing food and medication for their families. Active life in the community had to stop. There was an increase in the cost of living because goods were not moving from point to point. There was also the high increase of sexual and gender-based violence in the communities.
Deadly diseases are nothing new in Liberia. Our partners have been relying on the expertise they gained during the Ebola crisis to confront COVID-19. Once more, they are providing sanitation and hygiene supplies to communities.
Lucky to receive training from some of our partners to be able to continue our engagement online through mediums such as Zoom, micro teams. And then also, as we did during Ebola, we identified with the communities. We provided COVID-19 prevention materials, hygiene materials to the communities. And it will interest you to note that in one of our communities in Sino, the women cheerleader said to us, if it wasn't for the NGOs, we don't know how we would have prevented ourselves from this virus.
The pandemic has, of course, affected project implementation.
As it relates to the project implementation, active project activities could not continue. We had to adjust our project timelines, and because of that adjustment, we were forced to ask for extension to our partners for most of our projects, including the tenure facility project.
FCI and its partners have been given an extension, but with little sign of the pandemic fading away, COVID-19 awareness raising is going to become a part of everyday life.
Looking ahead, one of the things we want to do is to ensure that COVID-19 awareness is a part of our work. We'll also try as much as possible to continue practicing all the health and safety measures that has been put in place by the government, both at the community level and at the national level.
Thank you. There's some genuinely heroic work going on in Liberia. I can attest, having seen some of it myself. We have 3 speakers today from Liberia. I'd like to start, I hope, with Commissioner Ellen Pratt from the Liberian Land Authority. Ellen, you're charged with implementing a national process for formalizing customary lands in line with the law passed 2 years ago. Can you tell me what the challenges are?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. The challenges that we're finding, I think, are very similar to what many of our colleagues have. Our major impediment is very different, and it is a transformation of our tenure landscape in Liberia. Historically, and for all of our lives who are Liberian, there have been 2 categories of land, recognizing customary land ownership, the ownership of the people that have lived and worked on this land for generations. It is important that we get that message out. A combination of factors have limited the robust campaign that is needed to inform the Liberian citizens. Partly due to budget constraints, we've not been able to go as far into the country as we should. The Land Authority with our partners have done tours and information sessions throughout the country, but primarily at the county level, the county seat level, and some district levels. Thanks to our partners, including the tenure facility, we've been able to go a little deeper into the interior of the country, spreading the information. However, one of the challenges that we realized very early on was the fact that we needed to have this law broken down into simple English, as we call it in Liberia, understanding that a lot of our populace are illiterate. English is not the first language of over 70% of Liberians. So we embarked on several programs. One was the translation or the simplification of the law into a smaller packet of information, primarily focusing on customary land ownership. Additionally, we have now started to translate the law into several of our major languages so that the reach is much more robust. We have been on an ambitious awareness, and with the pandemic and COVID-19, we've had a slowdown. Now, thankfully in Liberia, 80% of our population has been asymptomatic. So our COVID numbers may seem low, but it is because 1, people are not exhibiting symptoms, and 2, we do not have testing throughout the country. However, we have seen a significant decrease in our COVID numbers. As the video shared, and Julie shared in the video, we had COVID started on March 16th, and we immediately had a state of emergency and a shutdown of all non-essential government services. After all of us being at home for about 6 to 8 weeks, we realized that there were so many land-related issues and conflicts that were arising. There was a lot of illegal land transactions starting to happen again. There was a lot of encroachment, and we realized that a lot of the gains that we had made with our partners in the land process, and the customary land awareness were being eroded because none of us were present on the ground. So we lobbied heavily at the governance level, and LLA was allowed to return to work because land was basically classified as an essential function. So by the middle of May, we were back at work. Essential stuff, some of the land conflicts and issues that we were finding in the landscape. However, most of our partners had not returned. So we were able, with limited means and through some of our county land offices, to begin to address some of those conflicts and issues. With the recent change in our governance and the government allowing everyone to come back to work, we are now prepared to start our awareness again. We've begun in some of the urban and peri-urban areas where we see a lot of conflicts, particularly in our county capitals, but we are also working on the land formalization process. We've done significant work in Southeast Liberia, which is quite remote. We've started working in 26 communities there, but the challenge is still logistics. The challenge is in Liberia, we do not have a lot of paved roads. So certain parts of the country we are not able to access at this time of year. Most of the Southeast, we are unable to get to right now. So we're relying on some of our partners in the landscape. One of the other challenges we have is making sure that the messaging is consistent. And while we were on a slowdown with COVID, we have been in the process of finalizing our national guide for land formalization. And it is this guide that has been developed in a participatory format with key stakeholders, and it has been adopted, and it is the official guide that we are asking all of our partners to use when helping communities go through the land formalization process by identifying the customary land and in the hopes of getting deeded to the customary communities. We have found a lot of challenges in the different messages that have been going out, not only from the land authority, but all of our partners. So we are confident, and we hope that with the national guide, we will start to see a more consistent flow of information, which is key to the successful implementation and land formalization process. I want to say thank you to the tenure facility for convening all of us despite COVID to continue to dialogue on these very important issues.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. That's very useful. Can I turn now to Julie Weir, Director of the Foundation for Community Initiatives in Liberia. I wonder, Julie, how do you see progress being made during this year? Yeah, please tell me more. Hello, Julie.
Hello, Fred. Are you getting me?
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, and thanks to all of us who are participating on this webinar. I was very impressed with the information from the Land Authority. I want to stress as progress from Liberia, the fact that we have had a very strong relationship with the Land Authority. I think that's a major progress for us, because hadn't it been a strong relationship with the Land Authority, I'm not sure whether we would have done what we are doing or what we have done to date in terms of helping communities to get their legal recognition to their land. So we've been able to, so far at this stage in the project, we've been able to work with all of our 24 communities to take them through the self-identification process. All of the 24 communities have also completed their governance formation. They're also in the process of formalizing their bylaws and constitution. We recently have validation from the Land Authority on some of the processes that we are carrying on to ensure that we are all on the same page in terms of the guide that the commissioner mentioned, to ensure that the process that is taking place at the level of the community by the partners, SDI, Parley, Liberia, and FCI, are all in line with the approved steps from the Land Authority. Also, to date, we are now in the process of working with communities to begin setting up their community land governance structures, because this is an integral part of the whole process of the legal and formalization of their customary land. And some of the challenges that was mentioned are similar challenges that we have also observed in the communities while we are working. And we thought that one way to be able to deal with some of those challenges, we have to also continue to strengthen the collaboration with the Land Authority. A major thing that has come up is the gap between formalizing and helping communities to formalize that they are now setting up structures. But what happened to those structures? Those structures, in the absence of them being active and functioning, it makes all of our gains and to be wasted. So I think that is a major gap that all of us, government and civil society, and we need to ensure that as we are setting up these structures, we're also considering how we support those structures to work. We'll also need to ensure that the commissioner mentioned the awareness aspect. We still need to share information in the communities about what the law provides for the customary land, as well as other land claims, and also ensure that community members and those who are going to govern the land at the level of the community are aware of their rules, and that we are not having conflicts in how people carry out their functions. So those are things that have happened so far as we have implemented the project here in Liberia. And I must confess that the Land Authority, our government partners, has really been supporting us in our implementation process.
Thank you. That's very good to hear. I'm going to move on quickly now to Silas Siako, who's a legend I think, in Liberian land rights, and is the coordinator of the 10-year facility project in Liberia. It's great to see you again, Silas. How do you see developments in customary land rights? And perhaps you have any thoughts about the effect of the pandemic? Silas. Hello, Silas. You were there a moment ago, I'm sure.
We lost him. We are trying to get him back.
Okay, I'll give him a minute. Otherwise, we'll move on to the panel, but and he can join us there if necessary. Do we have Samuel to come in next as well?
Yes, I'm here.
You are. That's great to hear from you, Samuel. If we don't have Silas very imminently, I'm going to go to you because you missed out earlier on, and I hope we can hear your presentation now. No, I don't think we have Silas now. So Samuel, please.
Yeah, he's coming in a second.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll be patient. Sorry. And then after Silas, we'll move in. We'll hear from Samuel. We'll try and update on Mali, and then what time we have left, we'll have with the panel. Silas, please go ahead.
Yes. So good afternoon to everyone, and good to be part of this conference. So basically, even though Liberia is one of the countries with the least number of COVID cases in the region, the disruption caused by the pandemic has also intensified and accelerated some of the challenges that existed in these communities that we are working. For example, deforestation of the natural resources, the natural habitat, water scarcity in certain parts of the country, and other pressing environmental and conservation concerns that continue to escalate despite the problem with the pandemic. And at the same time, critical efforts by communities and the government of Liberia to mitigate some of these challenges have now been disrupted by the pandemic itself. Nevertheless, the customary land formalization efforts itself, with the support of the attending facility and the partners that are involved in the project, even though it is all intended to yield a lot of improvements in community land and natural resource management, which will lay the foundation for efforts to mitigate some of these environmental and conservation concerns. We are experiencing these challenges. But to the extent that the pandemic is continuing to cause these disruptions, the partners continue to press ahead to try to lay the foundation for these communities to be much more engaged in the activities intended to help address some of these environmental concerns in the long term. But I think one example that is worth mentioning is the economic disruption that's being caused around the world. We are also seeing that in Liberia as well. At the moment, communities are seeking to expand economic opportunities through improvement in their tenant situation, but their path to expanding these economic opportunities, we see that narrowing in the face of the challenges that we are having to deal with at this point. So as the scarcity and competition for land increases in light of the situation we face, the pandemic, we are also seeing an increase in the challenge of supporting and coordinated efforts the partners working together, and there's a lot of enthusiasm at the local level. And also the collaboration with the land authority is really helping the partners to forge ahead. So we remain confident that at the end of this project, these communities will be able to turn their natural capital into economic opportunities for their own growth and development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Silas. It's very interesting to hear of the good collaboration with the Liberian Land Authority. Long may it last. Thank you. We're going to move on quickly now. I want to find some time for the panel, but first we need to hear from Samuel, who he's going to talk, I think, principally about Cameroon, but Samuel, please talk about tenure rights in the era of the pandemic.
Okay, thank you, Fred. I'm mindful of the time, and I have a very poor connection, so I will not be on video. And I still have my 3 points, but they are shorter now.
Thank you.
The first point is about what we saw during the COVID crisis, and not only in Cameroon. The perspectives were very bad for Africa, and what was expected was really a human tragedy because of the very poor health system that we have in most of the countries. So people were very much afraid. And what we realized was that in those times of uncertainty, I will say early March, April, what we realized was that people were moving back to their roots, going to the villages and trying to find a solution from the villages and not expecting the modern medicine to find a cure for them. And this was very clear. And what we realized also was that when they were getting there, of course, indigenous community, especially, and some local communities, claimed to have a solution. They did not know about the disease, but what they knew was that if your immune system is boosted, then you are likely to survive. And of course, there are so many plants, so many medicinal plants in the forest able to do that. But what we realized was that this was lacking, either because of logging or because of agro-industries or because those having the knowledge were not there anymore. So the vulnerability, the main lesson we learned was that in times of vulnerability, we go back to where we come from. And when we get there, what we realized was that the vulnerability of tenure rights that we collectively organize was also exposing us not to be able to cure our vulnerability. And I think this is something that we have to start thinking about in how we frame the discussion about biodiversity and climate change. The second point I have is that during the COVID crisis, some of the COVID restriction measures were used to push forward some of the controversial deals in logging and agro-industries. And what we saw between March and August was the government trying to push forward 350,000 hectares of deals in a period where there were restrictions on movements, restriction on meetings, so consultation was not an option, but all those contracts were signed, the decisions were taken. So this was a major trend, and we also saw it in some neighboring countries. And the last thing I want to say was that, of course, we changed the way we work. We were not able to go on the field as often as possible. And at the same time, we were hearing about all those deals being in the process of going through. So we did two things. We put in place an early warning mechanism, helping us to know what was going on in the villages, even if we were not able to go there. And processing the information and seeing what was the best way to use it. And this is the second point. So early warning mechanism as first point on how we started court cases. Start from the early warning mechanism to start court cases. We started two, and the two resulted into a postponement of the deal. And the postponement is still ongoing. We did a lot of media work on the grounds of information coming from the field, connecting journalists from the capital city or international journalists with community members so that they can hear from WhatsApp, Skype, they can hear their story. And we also did a lot of media policy work, advocacy work, again, using the document from the field, information from the field. What we learned from that is the fact that maybe tomorrow it will be really difficult to work on the field, to move as we are moving today. And capacity building will be a key component of all what we want to do. The point is really to enable the communities so that they are able themselves to know what is going on around them, to monitor it, and to do an initial reporting on what they see next to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samuel. That was really very interesting. The range of work that you're doing here is in Cameroon is really impressive. I want to see if we can get back to Mali. I don't know if Ibrahima and Brahima are online and available to talk now.
Fred, we have tried to reach both Ibrahima and Brahima, but they are not picking up their phones. So we think they have a major problem with the connection. Yes. Okay,
fair enough. In which case we have to sadly forget about doing any more on Mali. An interesting story untold, I'm afraid. So let us move on to the abbreviated version of the panel. We really only have about less than 10 minutes now. But for all our speakers who are able to get online to us now, I hope we can hear from them. I believe we're collecting up some questions. I don't have any in front of me that I can see,
They are in your chat, Fred, in the direct chat that you have on the right-hand side. I have pasted them there.
I'm seeing nothing.
Direct messages on the right-hand side of the screen.
I'm looking all the way down my, oh, hang on, there we go. Oh yes, here we are. For Marcelo and Manuel, if are you there? Do we have Manuel or Marcelo in Panama?
You're requesting them to turn on their videos?
Yes, please. Marcelo, Manuel, por favor, pueden abrir el audio y el video.
Do we have them anywhere or not?
Yeah, they're here.
Ah, Manuel. Sorry, is that Manuel or Marcelo? We have a question. Okay, great. Good to see you. The question is, the support from the tenure facility has made a significant contribution, particularly in positioning your organization, its members, all 12 of the indigenous peoples, helping to get in place the spaces for dialogue with government and to test the technical and administrative instruments and procedures that are the foundation of the recognition and securing of the indigenous land rights. TF has helped create new windows of opportunity. So I guess the question is how you see things are going forward. What is the role for the tenure facility in helping you develop these new opportunities? And how do you see things going?
Bien, como dijimos al principio, la primera parte es la Coordinadora Nacional, es una organización nacional, en principio que había solamente 5 unidades, 5 congresos y consejos, pero es un trabajo que se logró a través de TF, dándole espacio a los congresos, y ahora tenemos los 12 congresos unidos. Si hablamos, no eran 5 hermanos, ahora multiplicaron de los 12 hermanos, que cada uno de ellos tienen problemáticas territoriales. El espacio que nos ha dado TF a la CONAPID, un espacio tan importante, esa importancia que hemos tenido es a través de TF es dar resultado tan importante a nuestros hermanos indígenas. Y a su vez también, ese espacio también abrió un camino, el diálogo ante el gobierno. Ese diálogo de gobierno que se hizo hacia nosotros a escuchar, que ahora en la mesa institucional, donde están los ministros, como el caso de la Defensoría del Pueblo, Mi Ambiente, el Ministerio de Gobierno, se han sentado con nosotros para conversar el tema y la problemática de los pueblos indígenas. Gracias al TF, hemos logrado esa iniciativa de que como pueblos indígenas, las voces de los pueblos se escuchan a nivel nacionales. Principalmente somos defensores, y en Panamá como Centroamérica, y hemos dicho que es la cintura de todo a nivel del mundo. En este caso, los bosques principal está dentro de los pueblos indígenas, viendo hacia las partes costarricenses, la República de Costa Rica, y también viendo hacia la parte de la República de Hermanos Colombianos. Y por lo tanto, los bosques están dentro del corazón del mundo, en este caso de los pueblos indígenas. Somos conservadores, y que finalmente, gracias al proyecto gracias al TF, hemos tenido resultados de que ha sido no tan fácil, pero los logros se han hecho. Unas conversaciones y que TF seguimos dando esas luces, que TF es un organismo que realmente ha impulsado los procesos de la lucha de los pueblos indígenas. Una marcha, hemos tratado de incentivar a los hermanos, decirles sus razones, sus derechos, de las formalidades que tengamos, porque es de los 7 pueblos indígenas que somos, es el derechos. Y por lo tanto, que TF para nosotros ha sido un punto tan importante, y lo que solicitamos es que TF ha sido un trabajo grandioso para Panamá, y gracias a ello pues tenemos los resultados puntuales. Ese puntual que hemos tenido es el resultado de que la unidad de los 12 congresos, y que esa unidad de los 12 congresos el gobierno lo escucha en este momento. Recientemente el Ministerio de Gobierno y Justicia se sentó con nosotros, ¿ya? Escuchar a nosotros, plantear, y primeramente le planteamos las seguridad territoriales. La segunda es con el ministro del caso de Medio Ambiente, que hemos sentado un ministro dialogando, instalando esa mesa de diálogo a la creación de un territorio, lo que es la comarca Naso. De igual forma le planteamos al asesor de la presidencia de la República, y que recientemente estamos esperando una reunión con el presidente de la República para también instalar esas conversaciones y plantear el tema de los problemas indígenas. Gracias al TF hemos tenido un resultado exitosos. Bueno, de parte de Panamá como CONAPIT, queremos que TF nos siga fortaleciendo a la Coordinadora Nacional de los Pueblos Indígenas de Panamá. Otra cosa importante es restablecer ese mecanismo, las capacitaciones a la juventud, a las mujeres, las lideresas, y con las circunstancias que hemos tenido sobre la pandemia, pero aún así hemos seguido trabajando y puntualizando lo más necesario. El tema específico es que queremos lograr el objetivo. Ya hemos tenido algunos sectores de titulaciones de tierra, el caso de Darién, tierras colectivas, como el caso de los Nazos, como el caso de los Bribri, que es un pueblo más pequeño de Panamá, que contiene 500 personas, un pueblo nada más, y estamos dándoles ese fortalecimiento a ellos, que tengan su propia tierra titulados. Esa es la parte que la CONAPIT y gracias a TF hemos logrado muchísimo. Así es. Adelante.
Thank you. That's a good moment to end on, I think. Our time is up for the panel. I apologize to people. There are a couple of people who said questions which we've not got to, and I apologize for that, but our time is up. I'd like to thank all our speakers today, including those who didn't quite make it, but put in the effort. Tomorrow at the same time, we have more from 4 South American countries, so real South American focus. We're going to be in Guyana, Peru, Belize, and Colombia. And our theme will be climate mitigation and biodiversity protection. But to round off today, a reflection on the day, we have Abdon Nabaran from Aman in Indonesia, who also sits on the Tenure Facility Board. So to round off today, I hope to see you tomorrow, but to round off today, please over to Abdon.
Thank you, Fred. I will speak in Bahasa. Terima kasih untuk semua para pembicara ya dari Tenure Facility, Nonet, ada dari donor, ada Leif, ada Jan dan Madeline, dan tentu saja untuk para mitra Tenure Facility dari Indonesia, dari Panama, dari Mali, dari Liberia. Dan tentu sahabat saya Samuel. Ya, di bagian akhir ini saya akan memberikan refleksi saya selama puluhan tahun bersama-sama dengan masyarakat adat melalui berbagai krisis, bencana alam, dan terakhir dengan pandemi COVID. Nah, respon atau resiliensi dari masyarakat adat ya memang tidak sama di seluruh tempat dan juga tidak bahkan di Indonesia pun tidak sama ya. Semakin kuat sistem adatnya dan semakin pasti hak-hak adatnya, biasanya mereka punya kapasitas untuk resilient yang kuat. Tapi kalau wilayah adatnya sudah diinvasi oleh perusahaan, apalagi dalam situasi pemerintahnya tidak berpihak ke masyarakat adat, maka memang kemampuan resiliensinya juga rendah. Jadi seperti juga temuan-temuan selama ini, baik dalam melawan deforestasi ataupun mengkonservasi keanekaragaman hayati, memang keberadaan masyarakat adat dengan sistem adatnya menjadi sangat penting. Observasi saya selama ini, kalau di masyarakat adat yang kuat sistemnya dan tidak ada konflik hak, maka yang pertama mereka memiliki kesadaran kolektif yang tinggi tentang bencana dan mereka lebih siap menghadapi krisis atau bencana ini ya, karena mereka memang memahami dengan sangat dalam tentang kerentanan mereka sendiri. Kedua, perawatan yang tekun atas memori dan pengetahuan mereka untuk menghadapi beragam bencana itu ya, itu mudah untuk diretrieve, mudah untuk dimunculkan ketika ada persoalan. Ya. Yang ketiga adalah kebersamaan mereka untuk saling menjaga sebagai suatu kesatuan komunitas. Dalam kaitan ini, mereka lebih memiliki peranata sosial yang sudah teruji dalam pengambilan keputusan, ya. Sistem pemerintahan adat, dan juga punya kemampuan untuk berbagi peran untuk menghadapi bencana yang mereka sedang hadapi. Yang keempat, yang saya amati, keterhubungan mereka dengan pencipta, dengan leluhur, ya, dengan makhluk di sekitarnya yang bagi masyarakat adat memiliki roh, itu juga menjadi sumber kekuatan mereka ketika berhadapan dengan situasi bencana. Nah, kasus pandemi yang kita hadapi terakhir ini adalah sebenarnya hanya mereka perlu informasi tentang jenis bencana ini secara umum saja, dan mereka punya kemampuan melakukan respon yang tepat menghadapi situasi itu. Yang kelima yang saya catat dari observasi saya adalah bahwa komunitas-komunitas adat ini ya memiliki suatu kolektif visi kolektif untuk mereka bisa melanjutkan apa yang mereka jaga dari leluhur mereka. Jadi mereka menolak untuk punah, ya. Jadi, nah karena itu sebenarnya kalau hak-hak masyarakat adat dan komunitas lokal ini bisa kita perkuat, kita secara hukum, memang tidak hanya menahan deforestasi dan menjaga keanekaragaman hayati masyarakat adat. Tapi mereka akan lebih punya resiliensi untuk menghadapi beragam bencana ataupun pandemi seperti yang kita hadapi sekarang ini. Saya pikir itulah tantangan kita. Jadi sumber masalah kita sebenarnya tetap ada di pemerintah dan tentu saja para kapitalis yang masuk ke wilayah adat kita, dan itulah yang kemudian memunculkan kerentanan kita jauh lebih besar, lebih berlipat-lipat ketika ada ancaman bencana atau virus seperti pandemi COVID-19. Saya pikir itu saja refleksi saya, dan masih ada waktu untuk kita mendiskusikan hal-hal ini. Bagaimana kita bisa saling belajar sama-sama dari pengalaman kita selama setahun terakhir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. I think it's going to be my turn to say thank you for a wonderful afternoon, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And I hope to see you tomorrow. Please, for those attendees who didn't update their Zoom account, please do so you don't have problems with interpretation. And to our panelists, thank you very much for your wonderful contribution to today's event.
Thank you, Abdon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellen.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Yes.
Pras, makasih Pak Pras.
Pak Pras, terima kasih
Bonanet.
very much. So very happy to see you.
Thank you all.
Best regards. Thank you. Thank you, Left John.